Hey guys, this is Vishal from Edureka and I welcome you all to today's session. Today we are going to get started with AWS, that is Amazon Web Services. But before we do that, let's quickly take a look at today's agenda first. Well, I would be starting things off with why cloud and what it is. I would also discuss its different features. And why are we doing this? Because AWS is a secure cloud service provider, and it is important we understand what is cloud first. Once we've understood this, then we would get into the nitty-gritties of AWS. That is, what it is, why it is needed, what is its global architecture, and how to choose a region in AWS. I would also talk about different AWS domains. Finally, I would finish things off with the demo part. I hope this agenda is clear to all of you. So let's not waste any time and get started then. Well, this was the scenario before cloud computing came into picture. In order to host a website, you would be obviously needing some space, so there was a need to buy a stack of servers. Also, keeping the peak traffic in mind, the servers, as in whether to buy them more or buy less servers, was considered. And monitoring and maintenance of your servers was another thing that was considered. Now, what did this situation give rise to? Well, there were following disadvantages. One, the cost. Now, servers are very costly, and if you're buying a stack of servers, it is going to cost you a fortune. Now, imagine you have to buy, say, 2 to 3 petabytes of memory and or servers rather. So, what you do in order to buy this space, you invest money upfront. And say, for example, you need this space for 2 years. There's a high possibility that you might be using only 10% of these resources. What about the remaining 90%? Well, they are kind of underused for maybe 6 months, 1 year, or whatever it is. And after that, they come into use. So in this case, you're wasting a lot of resources, that is your space, plus you're also investing a lot of money. So this was one disadvantage. Again, troubleshooting these problems, as in taking care of servers and all those things, was another tedious task. And that kind of diverted people from their main business goals, and that wasn't convenient. Apart from that, this traffic, it varies. Now, there might be some hours in the day where the traffic is very high, and in remaining hours, your website or your server is idle and is doing nothing. So, say for example, you invest in 10 servers and those 10 servers are fully utilized only for 3 hours a day, and remaining 21 hours, the traffic is very less. Say only 3 servers are required. So, you're actually wasting 70% of your resources. So, you end up paying more, you end up underutilizing or at times overutilizing your resources, and that can be a problem. Apart from that, there is another important factor which one needs to consider: the amount of data that is growing these days. This data is huge, and the fact that people are using internet so much, it's understandable that people would be referring and using this digital data. And it is expected that this traffic is going to rise 3 times in coming 2 or 3 years. So yes, there's a lot of data and there's a problem. Where do we store this data? How do we keep it secure? How do we manage it? What about the hardware issues, the maintenance issues? And there's so many questions. And what is the solution for all these things? Well, it is cloud. You can move your data from your local systems to cloud, which has infinitely huge amount of space which you can use. You can dump, store all your data there on cloud and let the cloud providers take care of all your issues. What this does is this kind of helps you solve a lot of problems. One, you are paying only for the services and resources which you are using. This payment which you do in most of the cases is on timely basis. That is, you pay only for the time duration for which you use these services. Also, it is highly affordable. So you do not have to worry about your upscale, downscale. You do not have to worry about the time for which you would be using the resources. And you do not have to worry about the other hardware and all those issues as well. So this is where cloud comes into picture, and it helps you almost all the problems that were there before cloud came into existence. So what exactly is this cloud and how does it help us solve all these problems? Well, you can imagine cloud as nothing but a connection of networks, servers, and computers basically. And these servers and computers are basically owned by some third party and they reside somewhere on the globe. What organizations do is they just go ahead and keep and buy these huge stacks of servers, and you're only expected to go ahead and rent these services so that you can make optimal and proper use of these services. It actually lets you manage, store, process, and access your data. And all you need is internet. You can sit anywhere in the world and you can have access to these resources or your resources which lie on the cloud. So this is where cloud computing is so effective. So what exactly is this architecture and what does it do? Normally the applications these days which people use are multi-tier. So what you do is you are sitting at some place on the earth somewhere with your internet services and you want to access your data or your resources. What do is you just have your interface and your internet. You type in your request and there is something called as a middleware which takes in your request and forwards it or sends it to the backend where your data resides. Now, this is a collection of servers and different computers which are kind of in a network. So what happens is your request is sent there, your data is fetched and it is sent back to you where you can easily refer it. And you do not have to worry about any complications whatsoever because your data is residing on the database or on the cloud, and there are people who take care of your data, your hardware issues. You do not have to worry about the hardware issues, as in, are my resources getting updated? Are my applications getting updated? Is there sufficient space to use this data? How is this data getting stored? Who is taking care of it? What about the security issues, the compliance issues? Well, everything is taken care by experts, and all you have to worry about is just consuming these resources. And this is where I feel cloud computing or cloud has solved a lot of problems that was related to data, websites, and online applications. So this is about the basic architecture as far as the cloud computing goes. Now let us go ahead and take a look at different features which cloud computing has to offer. Now we've discussed quite a few of these already, but let's try to put little more light on these points. Now, what cloud computing does is it provides you with on-demand provisioning. When I say this, I mean you can ask for whatever you want, whenever you want, and in the amount you want. This means when you talk about scalability, it can happen in minutes and you can upscale, downscale depending upon your requirements and your business problems basically. Then what you do is you only pay for those resources which you are actually consuming. So it is very cost effective. And when I say you pay only for those resources, even the amount you pay is again very less. As I've already mentioned in the beginning, servers buying those can be very costly. But when you rent those using these cloud service providers, they are very, very affordable. And the amount that has been invested these days is very less compared to what it was invested back in 2000s or early 2000s. So yes, even the cost for cloud computing investments or the cloud has dropped down a lot in last 10 to 15 years. And whatever you pay these days is very, very, very less. Abstract resources. Now you have to stop worrying about, as I've already mentioned, what happens in the background, the hardware and all those things. You just focus on your business goals and that's it. Plus, you can focus on the things which you are efficient at, and the experts will take care of the remaining problems that we just discussed. Apart from that, whatever you use is measurable. So the time factor, the cost factor, and the money factor, everything gets optimized here. So these are the features why cloud computing is so valuable. Now that we've understood what cloud computing is, what cloud is, let us go ahead and see what are the different cloud service providers. To be honest, there are quite a few service providers in the market. We have IBM Cloud, Microsoft Azure, we have Google Cloud Platform, Dropbox. All these service providers are great, but AWS leads the way. Now, why is that? Well, there are quite a few reasons why AWS is so popular. Let's move further and try to understand these reasons. First of all, the cloud computing market share. Well, AWS has the highest share, and when I say that, it is 69%. That is, it is twice the amount if you compare it with all the other global cloud service providers combined. That is, which is just 31%. Now, if you compare it with Microsoft Azure, which is the second best, it is less than twice the total amount which AWS has to offer, and that is a huge amount. Now, if you talk about server capacity, similar is the case. Actually, it is even better for AWS here. How? If you talk about server capacity, all the other competitors combined, they provide you with a server capacity of X, whereas AWS would provide you with 6x of server capacity, and that is again huge and huge by huge margins. If you talk about pricing, Amazon Web Services, highly flexible. It provides you with two options. One is pay only for what you use. That is, you'd be paying only for those services and only for the time duration you use them for. Say, for example, I'm using maybe 2 petabytes of data for 2 hours a day. I would be paying it for only 2 hours of day and 2 petabytes only. Plus, it also provides you with a feature called as pay less as you use more resources. That means the more the resources you use, the more the services you use, you'd end up paying a lot lesser. So when you have such flexible pricing, such great share in the market and server capacity, no wonder you would be the best tool in the market or the service provider. And that is what AWS is. Now let us try to understand what exactly AWS is. Well, it stands for Amazon Web Services, which I've already mentioned. What it does is it gives you a platform or it provides you with cloud computing capabilities. It is a remote computing service. It gives you storage abilities, provides you with bandwidth to do all the things you want to, and it has great customer support and huge customized approach to your APIs or application protocol interfaces. All in all, a great tool to have when you talk about the cloud services. So who are the companies that use AWS? Well, there are quite a few companies in the market that actually use AWS, and to be honest, almost every company has its foot into AWS in some way or the other because everybody needs cloud services. To name a few, we have Netflix, we have Adobe, we have Reddit, Amazon. Now, all these companies, the amount of traffic which they handle every day is huge and they're being used globally. So it's understandable how powerful Amazon Web Services is. And if you're using AWS, you'd be sharing space with these companies, which is a wonderful thing to have. So what does AWS do? As in, how does it go ahead and provide you with all these services and all those things? Let's go ahead and try to understand its architecture or its approach towards providing cloud services. Well, basically, its architecture or its framework is kind of divided into regions, zones, and edge locations. Let's try to understand these a little more. Well, the structure is basically divided into regions and availability zones. I would also come back to edge locations, but let's stick to these two first. Well, what AWS does is it kind of has its multiple data centers across the world in different globe locations. What this does is it helps AWS expand its reach. Now, if I'm sitting in India, I would be wanting a resource that is close to me or the cloud service provider that is close to me. So if there are data centers in India, and if I'm in India, it would be easier for me to access this AWS platform. So what AWS does is it does exactly that. It has its data centers all across the globe. And these data centers are called as your regions. And each of these regions will have multiple replications. And these replications are called as availability zones. Say, for example, the one in India, which is in Mumbai, has two availability zones. Now, this is how the architecture looks like, or this is how the reach is when you talk about AWS. Now you can see their centers almost everywhere. You talk about Oregon, you talk about California, Virginia, Sao Paulo. Now, Sao Paulo, for example, it has three availability zones. That is indicated by the number in the circle which is there. Now, again, if you go to Mumbai, as I've already mentioned, it has two data centers or rather two availability zones. So this is how the infrastructure or the global infrastructure of AWS looks like. So what are these edge locations which I mentioned about a while back? Well, say for example, I'm based in India and I do not have a data center here. I'm kind of forced to use a data center which is in maybe Virginia. So I have to have my data in Virginia and I have to access it from India, which might cause a lot of problems. The latency issues and all those things. What if there was a center which was there in the interim or in between, or maybe a bridge or a platform kind of a thing that helped me connect these two places? Well, that connector is called as an edge location, which helps me overcome these problems of latency and all those things. So yeah, this is how the infrastructure basically looks like, and I believe it is fairly easy and simple to understand. So let us move further and try to understand the next topic then. How does one choose the right region? Now, yes, if we have so many regions, there would obviously be a question. If I'm based in India, what are the things I need to consider? If I'm based in London, what are the things I need to consider? There's so many points. To start with, we have something called as pricing. Now, these pricing, they vary from region to region. For example, the one in London would be costlier than the one that is based in Ireland, that is in Dublin. So you might want to consider that as well. Other issues are customer and user location. Also, where are you based? Since you are based in maybe on the eastern end of the world and you want to access something that is on the western world, that might be little inconvenient for you and also for the service providers. So it is wise you pick a region or choose a region that serves your purposes. Apart from that, we have latency, which I've already discussed. Depending upon the latency, you would also want to choose the region so that your services are provided to you at a faster rate. Security and compliance requirement. Now, these might also vary from government to government. Different countries have different laws, and accordingly, these compliance requirements may also vary. Service availability. Now, this is also another important point because not all the regions will have all the services which you need. So, depending upon that, you might also be forced to choose a region differently. So, these are the features, or these are the reasons rather, why you need to be careful when you choose your service provider or your region. So based on these reasons, you can always go ahead and pick a right region that meets your needs. I hope this is clear to all of you. So let's move further and try to understand the next topic. So yeah, next what we have here is different domains in AWS. And there are quite a few domains which provide you with different kinds of services. And we have something called as compute. Now, compute has various services like we have EC2, Lambda, Elastic Beanstalk, auto scaling, and etc. Now, EC2 is a very popular service. It is called as Elastic Cloud Compute. You can think of it as a raw server using which you can basically host your websites, applications, etc. And in simple words, it's a clean slate. Say, for example, you buy a new laptop where you start from the very beginning, where you install the OS which you like, you install the applications you like, and you start using it. It is that kind of a thing. And it is highly flexible, it is highly resizable and customizable, to be honest. Then we have other services like Lambda. It is something that cannot host websites, but it takes care of all the background tasks that are there. One more application similar to it is Elastic Beanstalk, but yes, it can host websites. And how is it similar or dissimilar to EC2? Well, in Elastic Beanstalk, yes, you can go ahead and host your websites and do all these things which EC2 does. But EC2, as I've already mentioned, it is more of a clean slate kind of a thing. Whereas Elastic Beanstalk, think of it as a place where you already have libraries. Say, for example, you have to use Java. So your Elastic Beanstalk is something that will have all the Java libraries and you can just go ahead and use Java there. So this is the difference between EC2 and Elastic Beanstalk, where Elastic Beanstalk will support the defined applications, whereas your EC2 is more clean slate kind of a thing. So yeah, these are the compute services which AWS provides you with. Then you have something called as migration. Now, this is where you move or migrate your data to and fro from your applications or the place where you reside to your cloud. Now, this migration happens online as well as offline. Yes, there is something called as Snowball. What it does is this service actually lets you physically move your data. Now, why do you need to move your data physically? Well, say for example, you need to move your data from XYZ place to your data center at AWS, which is at maybe ABC place. So, and if this data is huge, it is wise to move it physically. It is similar to sending a mail to one of your employees. Now, if you're just supposed to send him MOM or minutes of meeting, what you do is you just go ahead and type a mail and send it to him. But what if you had to send him, say, maybe 10 or 15 movies or video clips? You would instead give him the hard disk in person and ask that person to use it, right? Similar is with the data which you have. If the data is in huge amounts, it is affordable and advisable to transfer them physically, and that can be done by using one of these services which is called as Snowball. Next, we have security and compliance. Now, there are quite a few services again that come under this domain. We have IAM, we have KMS. Now, IAM is basically nothing but identification and authentication management tool, where users are identified, they are validated and authenticated to use the services that AWS provides. Then you have something called as KMS, which is more of an encryption kind of service, as in where you can create your public and private keys. But it is very important to understand that the private keys which are created are kind of risky to use. That is, you have to be very careful with it that you do not lose access or use of these keys. So yes, KMS and IAM are the security and compliance services which AWS has to provide you with. Then you have something called as storage and database services. Now, storage and database services are a little different from each other. We'll discuss those. First, let's stick to storage. Well, under the storage domain, there are quite a few other services. We have your standard object-oriented file system called as S3. Now, what S3 does is it basically deals in objects and buckets kind of a scenario. Now, what do I mean by this? Your files are treated as objects, and your root folder is basically a bucket which holds your data. Now, when you dump these files or when you store these files into your bucket, you have to make sure that it is on the root folder, and you kind of store your data using or in the form of objects into this root folder. So this is what S3 does. Then you have something called as CloudFront. Now, what CloudFront does is it basically provides you with content delivery network. We talked about edge locations in the past, and that is what CloudFront helps you do. It provides you get rid of all the latency that is there in your system. Then you have something called as Glacier, which is again a storage service. It is a very good data archiving service basically, and the best thing about it is available to you at a very low price. Next on this list, we have something called as networking and content delivery. Now, this domain basically has services like VPC, Direct Connect, and Route 53. Now, what VPC does is it provides you with virtual networks for better networking and traffic management basically. Then you have something called as Direct Connect. You can take a look at Direct Connect as an internet service basically, which is more secured and more in line with your AWS service provider. And then you have something called as Route 53, which is nothing but a domain naming system. So all these services, they come under your networking and content delivery domain. Next, you have messaging. Now, this is like the simple messaging which we do. Yes, there are quite a few services under this domain as well. We have our CloudTrail and CL3. Now, your CloudTrail is something that is a bulk messaging system, whereas your CL3 is more of a buffer or queuing service. Then we have database. Now, as I've told you that both storage services and database services, they kind of deal with storing data, because what is a database? Database basically holds your data, right? So what is the difference between these two? Well, you have to understand one thing. Database will not hold executable files. So if you have to store your executable files, they have to be on your storage and not on your database. So this is the difference between the two. So what are the different database services that AWS has to offer? You have Aurora, which is again a database system basically, but it is claimed by Amazon that it deals with SQL data and deals with it 5 times faster than what SQL has to offer to you. So if you're using this service and you have to deal with the SQL kind of thing, this is a very good tool to have, or a service to have rather. Then you have DynamoDB. This deals with non-relational or maybe unstructured kind of data, or is a service that helps you deal with these databases. There are quite a few unstructured databases. I won't be talking about those. That is a discussion for some other time. But your DynamoDB service basically helps you handle these kind of databases. And then finally, we have the management tools basically. And the management tools are something that help you manage your resources and data much better. Say, for example, we have our CloudWatch, which is a very powerful monitoring tool. And then you have CloudFormation, which is again a great tool when you talk about templatizing your applications or your infrastructure basically. So these are the different domains which AWS has to offer to you. I hope you all have understood this. In that case, we can just move further and get started with the next topic of discussion. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you a demo of how to sign into AWS Free Tier, because yes, AWS has a lot of services to offer to you which are at free of cost. And normally people hesitate to log into AWS, and there are reasons for it because they have few constraints which AWS put you into, and when you sign in, you have to give in few details like credit cards and all those things. And this is where people think twice before signing into AWS. But let me quickly give you a walkthrough as in how do you do it or how do you sign into your AWS account. So bear with me till I switch back to my browser and we can move further with the demo part. So there you go. What you do is you just go ahead and go to AWS's free tier basically, and you can just have access to the website. Yes, there you have it. This is how the free tier or the web page for the free tier looks like. You can just go ahead and click here and create your free account. But before we do that, let's go down and take a look at They are the details which the free tier has to offer to you. Now, first thing you need to understand is this free tier is available to you for one complete year. Now, what does this mean? Basically, you can use few of the resources or almost all of the resources for free for first year, but there's certain limitations on its usage. And when I say 1 year, it starts from the day you first sign up for AWS. And when you do that, you have all these things at your access. Say, for example, Amazon EC2, which we just talked about, that is Elastic Cloud Compute. And what it does is it gives you 750 hours of access to the server node for the first year. And when you say 750 hours a month, that is a lot of amount to have. And you can do a lot of things using this much amount of time. Secondly, you have Amazon QuickSight. Now, what it does is per spice capacity, it gives you 1 GB. Now, I won't get into the details of what this thing is. It is something that is used for analytics, and let's stick to the main discussion. So I won't get into the details of analytics and what exactly does you provide with, or does the software or service provides you with. Then you have the database capabilities or the services, that is your Amazon RDS, which we talked about. And again, it gives you the database space for, again, 750 hours per month. And the instance is T2.micro instance. This is something that we would again be seeing in the succeeding sessions or the following sessions that would follow this session. So yes, we'll be talking about these things in detail again. As you can see, we have Amazon S3, which again provides you with 5 GB of standard storage, and AWS Lambda. Now, what it does is it helps you process 1 million requests per month for free. And again, this is great to have. Then we have these things where it gives you step-by-step solution as in how to sign in and how to learn about the basic capabilities which AWS has to offer to you. So these are more introductory kind of video, basically 10-minute sessions which talk you through or walk you through the basics of AWS, as in the ones which we discussed in the video or we have discussed till time in this session is what I'm referring to. You can also go ahead and get into the advanced things, as in how to build applications and all those things. So in order to create a free account, what you have to do is you can just go ahead and click on this icon, and your AWS website will redirect you to a page where you can go ahead and create your own account, as in a free account. Now, I being an existing user, I have an access to getting into AWS and signing in for free. So that is not what I would be doing. I would be coming here and I would be saying, say I log into say I create a new account. So this is what I would be having at my disposal basically. I'll have to go ahead and put in my email address, my password, and I have to confirm that with the account name. Now, once you do this, what it would do is it would just ask you for your credit card details. Now, people fear that AWS might charge you for services. But then again, they've specified the limits very clearly, and as long as you stay in the limits, nothing would be charged from you. And before you do sign in, it asks you whether you want to use the services for free. And when you click on it saying yes, what it does is it makes sure that you are updated as an amount of access which you do out of this website and how many services do you use. It would keep you updating on those things. As I've already mentioned that it has great measuring capabilities and it keeps you updated with all the resources which you use so far. Yes, the only thing that happens is when you enter your debit card or credit card details, I've actually gone ahead and entered my debit card details and it did accept those details as well. So yes, you can go ahead and use your debit card details as well. Credit card is something that is preferable. When you do that, what AWS does is for the verification purpose, it would initially kind of deduct $1, that is $1 from your account. And once the verification is complete, which is a 5-minute process, that amount is refunded back into your account. So when that $1 gets deducted, you need not worry because that is just for the security or the authentication purpose. That's it. And once you do go ahead and create this account, what you can do is you can always go ahead and log into your account and you'll have all the services which are available for your access. Now, I would be going ahead and logging into my account, which I already have here on AWS. And once you do that, this is what the console would look like. Now, you have all the services available here. Yes, there you go. You can build a solution, that is, you can launch a virtual machine, you can build your own web app, you can host a static website, connect to an IoT device, get into development projects, and even register for a domain. We talked about DNS and all those things. So yes, it helps you do that. There are other services provided by AWS, which is DevOps, which is very trending and highly trending in the market. This is something that combines our developers and operations point of view and gives you something which is a combined approach and helps you overcome various problems which both developers and basically system admins face. So yes, this is a great tool or resource to study, or the tutorials to attend basically, because that would help you unravel various other concepts again. As far as the AWS services are concerned, we have all these services which are available here. You have your EC2 management tools, mobile services, AR and VR, which is augmented reality and virtual reality basically, application integration and all those things. You can just go ahead and click on these icons and you'll be redirected to those services. That is, you can go ahead and create your own EC2 instances and all those things. So for now, I don't think I've created any instance. Yes, see that 0 running instances. No sooner you go ahead and launch an instance, you'd be getting the updates here as in, okay, this is the running instance and all those things. To do that, you have to come here and you have to say launch instance, and there you go. The perfect guides available for you, whether you want to launch it on your Linux environment and all those things. So you can go ahead and select that. You can select the machine and all those things, and you can just launch your instances and get started with AWS. So this is fairly easy and fairly basic to get started with. I hope you all have understood whatever I've talked about till time. If you all are really interested in knowing more about, as in how to go ahead and create the EC2 instances and how to go about the architecture and how to understand all these concepts in detail, I would highly recommend that you go through one of the videos created by Mr. Hemant Sharma. He actually creates videos for Edureka and he creates those videos on Amazon Web Services, and his videos are very nice and very good to go through. So yes, that is a highly recommended video if you are really interested to know about these things in detail, and I would suggest that you all go through that video for sure. As far as this session is concerned, this is where I would be taking a pause and I would be ending this session because my prior aim here was to get you started with AWS, and I hope you've talked enough about AWS to get you started. As I've already said, you can go ahead and visit the other videos that are there in the buffer, and I'm sure that you would be good enough to get started and even kind of achieve some kind of expertise in AWS if you go through all the videos that are there in the buffer. So all the best to all of you, and I hope you like this video. I hope to see you all again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!